Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today for dinner I am making homemade pizza with breadsticks using homemade dough and pizza sauce for less than $5. This recipe takes me around 30 minutes to make, which is less than ordering pizza to be delivered. We are going to start off by dicing up half an onion. I dehydrated some onions last fall, and I usually use that instead of using fresh onions. I figured most people won't have access to homemade dehydrated onions, so I switched to fresh onions this time for you guys. We are going to get a small pot and pour some olive oil into the pan. Olive oil is not made to get very hot, so I don't go above medium heat when using it. It will lose most of the flavor if it is heated too high. Now we are going to add the onions into the heated oil and saute the onions until they are translucent. If you are using fresh garlic, I would add that once the onions are clear. I was unfortunately out for this recipe, so I will substitute with garlic powder later on. While the onions are cooking, I will start on the dough. We're going to add 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 1 1/2 cups of warm water. The water temperature should be around 110 degrees Fahrenheit. We will let this sit for 10 minutes to get the yeast active. After the 10 minutes is up, you can add the flour straight into the bowl. I add about 4 1/2 cups here. My recipe calls for 4 cups, but the dough is too wet for my liking, so I always add half to another full cup of flour. Next we will add 1/3 cup of olive oil into the dough. Then we will add 1 teaspoon of salt into the bowl. I use a dough hook in my kitchen aid instead of hand kneading it, and I let the machine knead for 5 minutes. The dough here seemed a little wet for my liking, so I added half a cup of flour to the 4 cups of flour I already added before. You can see here that it allowed the dough to start pulling away from the sides more. This is a wet, heavy dough, which helps it spread easily over the pizza pan. Once the onions are done, I add my spices into the oil. It helps to add the spices to the hot oil as it helps release more of the natural flavors. I add about 3 tablespoons of parsley and only about 1 tablespoon of oregano, as too much of this can cause a bitter flavor. Next I added 1 teaspoon of chili flakes and 3 tablespoons of garlic, since I didn't add any fresh garlic earlier. I let this simmer for several minutes before adding the crushed tomatoes in. I haven't canned any fresh garden tomatoes this season, so I am just using a 20-ounce can of crushed tomatoes from the store. You can just add the can of tomatoes into the pot and let it gently simmer. I try to get this started several hours before making the pizza to try to get as much flavor as I can into the sauce. But I've also made it right before and it still tasted great. I like my sauce thicker than this, so I will use a half of a small can of tomato paste to help thicken it up. You can use more or less depending on your preference to the sauce. As you can see here, the sauce has a perfect consistency for me. The last step for the pizza sauce is adding in the sugar. I added about 1/4 cup of sugar here since I like my sauce on the sweet side. You can also use a sugar substitute if you're looking for a more natural approach. This is a great thing about homemade, is that you can tweak it to your taste. I just let the sauce simmer on the stove until I'm ready to add it to the pizza. This dough recipe is very versatile. You can use the whole amount for 1 pizza and make a thick crusted pizza. You can split the dough in half to make 2 pizzas, or do like I'm doing this time and make a side of breadsticks with your pizza. To make the breadsticks, all you want to do is split your dough in half. I think I did 3/4 of a pizza dough and half of the dough for the breadsticks since I wanted a thicker pizza. I have a cast iron pizza pan that I love. I highly recommend this and I will post the link in the description if you are interested. Nothing sticks and is very easy to clean. I just pour about 1/4 cup of olive oil on the pan and use my hands to smear it around. This also oils up your hands and helps with handling the dough to prevent it from sticking to your hands. I just place the dough in the pan and use my hands to roll it out until I cover the entire pan. I do the same thing with the breadsticks. I oil the glassware and just use my hands to roll the dough as close as I can to all the edges. This smaller glass pan is perfect for the family size of batch of breadsticks. Next, I just use a knife or even a rubber spatula that I use to get the dough out of the bowl to make individual breadsticks. This will help to break the breadsticks apart when they are fully baked. My husband was nice enough to go outside and pick some fresh basil from our garden. He took a short video of him battling a spider to collect me the basil. I'm not a fan of these fabric pots I bought. They have grown algae all over them, and I will throw them out after this season. I'm thinking of transplanting these herbs into the house to prevent future bolting and to use year-round. This basil is amazing, and now I can never buy store-bought basil again. My husband requested that I grow this just to use on our pizzas, and he has turned me into a basil snob. If you're looking to bring your homemade pizzas up a notch, then I recommend growing large leaf basil for your pizzas. I just chop the basil into bite-sized pieces. Sometimes we add this into our pizza sauce, other times we place it directly on the pizza. The trick to amazing pizza crust is to get the oven as hot as you can. My oven goes to 550 degrees, and that is the temperature I cook this pizza at. I always cook my pizza crust first since the dough is so thick. I cook it around 6 to 7 minutes. Do take the time to cook the dough first, or your pizza will be raw underneath. My husband always tops the pizza when he is home. He adds extra spices and makes the pizza way better than when I do it myself. So he took over while I watched our daughter. First, he adds the homemade pizza sauce onto the pizza crust. This pot of sauce will make 2 pizzas worth. I either save the other half in the fridge, or I use it for dipping sauce for breadsticks. We make pizza about once a week since it's one of my husband's favorite food. Next, you want to sprinkle on some mozzarella cheese onto the pizza. My husband just dusts the cheese with garlic, oregano, red pepper flakes, parsley, and we usually add Parmesan cheese here, but we were out. My husband then sprinkled on our fresh grown basil onto the pizza. Then you just lay down any toppings you plan on using. My husband's favorite topping is pepperoni and mushrooms, but we were also out of mushrooms, so we just made pepperoni pizza. He then sprinkles on some salt at the very end. I highly recommend adding the extra spices on top. It is a game changer. I usually use butter on my breadsticks, but my husband decided to use olive oil instead. Both will work out and they taste amazing. He then sprinkled on some garlic powder and some salt on top. We usually use Parmesan here, but we were out, so he substituted mozzarella instead. We just bake the pizza and the breadsticks about 7 minutes in the oven or until they are both light brown on top. The pizza came out amazing. The breadsticks still needed a few minutes since they were on the bottom rack, so we moved them onto the top rack when we took the pizza out. Here is the final product. It tastes as good as it looks. This is my daughter's slice. I will cut hers up into bite-sized pieces. Here is my husband's plate showing everything together. This is my go-to quick pizza recipe. I can usually get this made in less than 30 minutes, which is less time than it would take to go pick up or have the pizza delivered to our house. And I know what is in this pizza versus the long list of ingredients that are in the pizza that is frozen or delivered. I hope you guys enjoy this recipe as much as my family does. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and thanks for joining me in the kitchen this evening.